All right, my friends, thanks for joining me once again. It is early evening, March 3rd, 2025. It's 75 degrees out here. It feels great. It's going to get cooler, and I'm enjoying it as much as I can before summer comes our way. And within 2 months, it's going to get really, really, really hot. Sometimes it's hot now, depending on who you talk to, but it takes a lot. I'm pretty comfortable up until it reaches about 90 degrees. You might wonder why I'm talking about stuff like that. It seems like idle chit chat, doesn't it? Well, it is. It is. But it's the kind of thing we would talk about if you were sitting around here right now, right? That's what people do. They ask how they're doing, talk about the weather, what's going on in their life. The only way I have of reaching you is through this camera. I hope you're doing well. I really do. I hope you're doing well. Some people aren't. I have people in my life who aren't doing very well. And it sucks. But one way or another, we all get through it. And sometimes it's not something we like to think about or talk about. But if you're having a difficult time, I would say hang tough, hang tight, and just be patient. Things have a way of turning around. They really do. I want to ask you something. What is your attitude about failure? What's your attitude towards failure? Are you afraid of it? Do you abhor it? Do you steer away from it? Do you think only losers fail? Do you let it keep you from trying to succeed at something? This is an important question to ask, I believe, because I personally feel like, and a lot of people do too, that failure is a prelude to success. It's important to success. I've been reading a book, and I talked about this in my last video. I've been reading a book called This Will Make You Smarter. It's not one of my favorite books. It's not because it's probably not working for me, but it's a little above my pay grade, to be honest with you. It probably is. And I kind of see some of these scientists in here as being pretentious and probably a little egotistical, but not all of them. Some of these articles are actually pretty good. They're very short little articles, maybe like you can read them in like 1 or 2 minutes each. So, you get through them. You chew up the meat, spit out the bones kind of a thing. There's one I've been reading here today called Failure Liberates Success. It's written by Kevin Kelly. He's an editor-at-large. Whatever that means. What does editor-at-large mean? What's the difference between an editor and an editor-at-large? I honestly don't know. Maybe you do. I could look it up. But I'm probably going to forget. Even after I click off this video, I'll probably never look. Maybe you can leave a comment down below and tell me what an editor-at-large is. But, I guess he's an editor-at-large for Wired magazine. I think I've seen that on the shelf somewhere, but I don't really know what it is. He's also an author. He's also the author of What Technology Wants. So anyway, I won't read the whole thing. I could. It might be interesting to some, a little tedious to others. Doesn't take long to read, but I'm just not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to tell you what jumped out at me, which is like the first 2 sentences at first. He says, we can learn nearly as much from an experiment that doesn't work as from one that does. Failure is not something to be avoided, but something to be cultivated. Something to be... What do you think of when you hear the word cultivated? I think of a garden, right? Maybe a farm, a field and a farm. The planting of seeds, watering it, nurturing the soil, and just seeing what happens. Sometimes the crops are good, sometimes they're not. I grew up in Indiana, in farm country. So we saw a lot of farms, and maybe some of you grow up around them too, or have grown up around them, so you know what I'm talking about. That's what I think of when I think of cultivated. But he says failure is not something to be avoided, it's something to be cultivated. Have you ever thought about it like that? Do you avoid failure? Do you let it keep you from reaching higher plateaus? I guess there's probably a lot of people in this world that might even teach your kids that you should not be a failure. Failure is not acceptable. You think of these kids who maybe you went to school with some kids. Maybe your parents were like this. My parents weren't. But I've heard of parents being like this. Like you don't get anything but straight A's. And even an A is somewhat of a disappointment if you could have gotten an A plus. Right? I've known kids like that. My kids have known every generation has kids in school whose parents have those kinds of expectations of them. And failure is not an option. I don't know what becomes of people like that. I don't know what the fallout is because I don't know that I've ever tracked people in my life. I don't have a lot of friends I associate with or get together with. So I don't really know what the fallout of that is. I haven't studied it, but I can imagine that would somehow warp your whole trajectory in life, regardless of what kind of success you might have met along the way. You could have become a doctor, a lawyer, anything, all those things that we consider to be really successful, even though some of them are failures. I'm just saying that we generally think of people in those fields as being successful, right? Yeah, I don't know. I don't look on failure with raised eyebrows. Maybe because I failed a lot. I have failed in every area of my life quite a few times. But I've also learned a lot. I'll tell you what I think failure has done for me. I feel like it gives me the ability to relate to others in a meaningful way. It allows me to understand other people in ways that I might not be able to if I had thought that failure wasn't an option. I also think it's important to fail around people that you love and care for several reasons. I think they need to understand that it's okay to fail, but I think it gives you an opportunity to find out what kind of people they are, what you're dealing with. If the people that you're loving and caring don't accept your failures, they probably don't belong in your life. If there's no grace, no mercy involved, then it might be time to part ways. But on the other hand, I think it's important for the people that you are close with to understand that failure might be okay. But beyond that, like I said, failure is a prelude to success. Ask any inventor that. I mean, there's a very fine line between failures and success because there has to be. If you're gonna inventors, when they come up with something, they have to go through more failures than successes. I mean, they usually have like one success and many failures before that, and the line of demarcation is one little shift in technique or approach, and that's it. He goes on to say here, further on down in the same paragraph, he says, you should carefully but deliberately press your successful investigations or accomplishments to the point where they break, flop, stall, crash, or fall. When I was a kid, I had a habit of, my mother would call this pushing buttons, but I had a habit of seeing how far I could get anything to the breaking point. It could be a toy. It could be my own body. When we work out, a lot of times we work out to failure. We want to find out what our threshold is, because we know that on the other side of that is growth, right? Not all the time. Because if you do it wrong, you'll suffer injury. That could actually put you further behind. So you have to be careful. But you have to, even with toys I had, I would try to snap them. Not actually snap them, but like see how far I could get right before something snapped. And sometimes they were things that were costly. And I would pull on things, push on things, throw things, slam things. I would do all sorts of things to objects just to see how far I could get them to the breaking point. Did you do that? Was that a habit with you, or was I just weird? And I thought about that today when I read this. That's what I thought of. And I questioned myself, which I've never done before. I questioned myself about it and said, why did I used to do that? And I think it's because I wanted to find out what the true value of something was. Like, what is it really made of? How much integrity does this have? Although that was a word I wouldn't have used back then. But what kind of integrity does this thing have? What would it take to actually break it? But I would never want to actually get something. I wouldn't want to destroy something. I just wanted to get it close. And I have a feeling that sometimes that's what failure does to us in life. It wants to find out what we're made of, how strong we've gotten, where our value lies, where we are on the spectrum of anything. And on the other side, hopefully if we don't break, if we don't suffer injury, we'll experience growth. Down in Fort Myers, there's the Edison Museum you can go to. I've been once. I really enjoyed it a lot, and I've read a biography on Thomas Edison. It was fascinating. And even in that museum, they were talking about the incandescent light bulb and how many times Edison failed. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of times. None of us would probably have the patience to go through something like that, but he did. He expected failure. He actually enjoyed it. In fact, one time when his he had lost everything at one time. His what do you call it? Where he did all of his work, it all went up in smoke. Literally caught fire. He ran the risk of losing everything, and he sent in one of his children to go get their mother and to tell her to come outside and watch the fire because she's never seen anything like this before. And I sat down and they watched everything burn to the ground. And he approached it with a very stoic attitude, knowing that he would rebuild because he knew how to fail. He expected failure, and that's just the way it was. If you're failing in life, if you're trying anything, whether it's for the first time or whether it's for the 1001th time or 1001st time, that was, boy, that was a failure in and of itself. But if you've tried something either for the first time or the 1001st time, no, you may not be far off from where you want to be. You might be ready to approach something that exceeds your expectations. And all it's going to take is one little shift in approach or technique, and you've got it. And that goes for anything in life. And I really appreciate this article for that. And one of the things he does say here is that it's a matter of failing forward. You don't want to keep failing where you're failing backwards. Like if you're failing to the point that you're not only spinning your wheels in the sand, but you're actually going backward time, that's when you know you need to change things and kind of reconsider what you're doing. But as long as you're failing and you're not injuring yourself, you're not coming to ruination, and you're not constantly moving in backward motion, then just keep failing. Because failure is not for losers. Failure is for winners. I don't know that I've ever described myself as a winner. I don't go around saying that. But in essence, that's really what it takes. At the very end of this article, he says, the habit of embracing negative results is one of the most essential tricks to gaining success. There's a friend of mine who I've known for years, and he just recently started his own YouTube channel. It's called Eric's Excursions. And I'm really proud of him because he's so excited about it. He's just so excited about it. And anybody who started a YouTube channel knows how hard it is to stick with it in the early days, sometimes for years, because you don't see a whole lot going on. But he's loving it. And you know, he actually, I sat down and talked to him last night for quite a while, and he actually expects quite a bit of failure, but he's okay with it. He has a really good, healthy attitude about it. And I told him throughout, in the course of several different conversations, I think you're going to end up going somewhere with this. You just keep doing what you do, and eventually you're going to find something that works. And I'm really happy for him, but it's because not because he's met a lot of success, because he hasn't. Basically, he's excited about failing over and over and over again, and I just absolutely love that. And it really got me thinking quite a bit that maybe I need to rethink a few things myself and polish up my attitude about it. And somewhere along the way, I think maybe my senses have grown dull towards it. But anyway, I hope it's giving you something to think about. I know it has me over the last several days. It's been good for me. But nevertheless, I hope you're doing something you love to do. I hope you found something in your life that makes you happy, and that you're willing to do despite the results. You do it because you love it, because you believe in it. And I think, you know, honestly, I think one of the ways of truly meeting success is not in how much money you can make from it, not in how many people like your videos or subscribe to your channel or whatever the case may be, whatever it is you're doing in life. I think it's just when you're okay with what you're doing because you love doing it, and you do it no matter what. And it just means something to you, even if it means nothing to anybody else. And I believe that sometimes luck and fortune have a way of creeping its way into your life when you don't try so hard, but you just keep pedaling, you just keep swimming, you just keep moving forward. All right, that's all I've got for today. Hope you've enjoyed it. All right, guys, I've got to get going. I've got things to do. But I thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. In the meantime, be wise.